The average person in their mid-20s is making probably the most money they've ever made and keeping basically none of it. The median net worth under 35 years old sits around $39,000, and a good chunk of it is parked in a car instead of anything that really builds you real wealth in the long term. Meanwhile, they're bringing home around $1,200 a week. So it's not that the money never shows up. It shows up, but then it's immediately gone. And if you felt that gap between what you earn and what actually sticks, you're not behind. You're feeling what the average person in their mid-20s feels like. But what they don't tell you is that normal or average at 25 is a trap that nobody warns you about. So here's what I did instead in order to escape that trap and avoid being left behind and being broke in my 20s. There are 7 specific things that I did in my 20s and 5 plain old accounts that anyone can open that really helped me not get left behind. And the other 2 things that I did are a lot more quieter, and one of them actually ended up mattering more than any account that I have. So let's go through the whole list. First, let's talk about the accounts. Let's start with the one that holds every other account up. And number 1, it's having an emergency fund within a high yield savings account. Now, this is the first account that kind of holds everything up and kind of keeps me, sane. And a high yield savings account is basically just like any traditional savings account, except it gives you a way higher interest rates, around 9 times more than the national average. I think, Bank of America, Wells Fargo gives you around 0.042%. It may be a little lower. And the average high yield savings account will give you anywhere between 3 to 4%. I personally use Chime, Wealthfront, SoFi, and I'll link all the ones that I like and I actually have opened in the link down below. But this is the account where I keep my emergency fund, and my emergency fund is basically just around 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved up just in case anything happens. Maybe I lose a job, or maybe I break a thumb, or my car breaks down. It's just so I have the peace of mind knowing that if anything does happen, I will be okay. It's something that's kind of scary, and I want you to comment down below if you relate to this, but around a third of US adults can't even cover a surprise $400 expense. And nowadays you sneeze the wrong way and that's a $500 hospital bill. I swear to God, it's so expensive just to breathe. Plus, how much you actually need in your emergency fund is based off of your real expenses, not your paycheck, and that's the number that people get wrong all the time. Let's just do some quick math just so we can kind of, quickly kind of have an idea of how much you need in your emergency fund. Let's just say you spend $2,000 a month living expenses. That includes, your rent, your insurance, your bills, your utilities. $2,000 sounds really good, but let's just say for math wise, $2,000. In your emergency fund, you need anywhere between $6,000 to $12,000 in order to kind of be, the most optimal safe if anything were to happen. Me personally, I have around $50,000 sitting in my high yield savings account, and this includes my emergency fund, but also other savings goals like a down payment on a house or for travel. Now, I just want to preface that this is not an investment. Just because you're earning 3-4% in your interest, that doesn't mean you're actually making money. Inflation is around 3.8%, so you're just kind of keeping up with inflation. Your money's not withering away like it would be if you were to put that in, just a regular checking account. If you want to actually grow your wealth, you need to invest, and a high yield savings account is not an investment. So once you have this emergency fund saved up, you don't want to save anymore. This is purely insurance if something happens, so you don't have to sell some stocks or go into pretty bad credit card debts. And speaking of credit cards, the second account and the second thing that I did was I opened up a credit card as soon as I could when I turned 18. Now, the reason why opening a credit card is really important, despite whatever Dave Ramsey says,
how you can handle your credit cards because you pay them off every month when 78% don't, and even those that do overspend, especially those of you with airline miles. It's the biggest scam in freaking history.
Is because once you open a credit card, you can actually start working towards building your credit score. Now, a big portion of a credit score is just credit length, which is pretty much how long you've had, whatever credit lines that you had open. Let's just say your credit card. And so the earlier you do it, the longer you have, the more responsible you look to the bureaus, and therefore the better score you'll have. Now, the reason why this is kind of controversial and why Dave Ramsey, hates credit cards so much is just because a lot of people are not responsible with it. They think it's free money, or they don't really see kind of the emotional aspect or the psychological aspect on why it kind of messes them up. A lot of people, when they get a credit card, they think that it's free money and they just can spend it willy-nilly. They have to worry about it until the end of the month. But when the end of the month happens, they realize they spend way too much money and they don't have that money saved up in their bank account, so they can't pay off that debt. And because they can't pay off their debt, they're locked in, a 20% interest rate, whatever crazy interest rate that the credit card does. And now they have compound interest working against them, and now they're in a never-ending cycle of debts. This is what you really want to avoid. The average credit card rate is literally 21% if you carry that balance and the card stops being like a tool and starts being an anchor. So all you have to do is really abide by a couple rules. Never pay more than you don't have. So just don't buy stupid stuff with money that you don't have. Just treat it like a debit card. 2, always pay in full and on time. You can just set up automatic payments. I do this with every single credit card, so I don't have to think about it at all. And then 3, don't open, 10 credit cards in one go. Spread it out 3 to 6 months, 6 to 8 months if you really want to be careful, but just don't open, a lot at one time. Also try to keep the usage under 30%. So let's say you open a credit card and it gives you $1,000. You really want to only use around $300 just so the credit card bureaus don't see you and go like, oh, he needs to be borrowing money all the time. And so it just shows that you're being responsible. What you can do also is just set up your automatic payments to pay it off before the statement balance. The statement balance is pretty much when they take a snapshot of your credit card balance and they send it to the bureaus, and that's where they kind of see that credit utilization. But if you just pay it off for statement balance, then it's going to show as a zero every single time. And so that's what I do. And so my first credit card that I opened up when I was 18 was just with the first bank account that I had, which was with Bank of America. And I opened up the Bank of America Cash Rewards card. It's a pretty crappy credit card, but your first credit card doesn't really matter. You don't really need to worry about, try to optimize for the best credit card or trying to travel hack yet, just because it's your first credit card. You just need to worry about, getting in the club first. And so it doesn't really matter. Just try to get a credit card with whoever you're banking. Discover it's also really good. I'm pretty sure everyone can really get that. But the most important part is just kind of creating that credit account and getting your credit score started. Or the third thing that I did was I set up a Roth IRA and started investing into it. A Roth IRA is just the type of investing account that's meant for retirement. I made tons of videos on this, but basically any gains that you make within this investment account, let's just say you buy stock at $10 and it goes all the way to $1,000. All of those gains is 100% yours. The IRS cannot touch it. It's tax free. But of course, there are stipulations like you can't withdraw more than contributions until you're 59 and a half. You only contribute up to $7,500 a year because it's so OP. And if you make too much money, you can't even use it. Now, I opened up when I was 18 and it was really hard to kind of max out my first year because I was, a broke college student, but I tried my best to put in as much money as I could. And I just tried to make it up as I go. And as I made more money, then I started putting in more and more and more money until I was able to consistently max it out every single year. I use Vanguard for my Roth IRA, but you can really use any brokerage you want. And the most important thing that you need to know, which is kind of embarrassing that I have to say this, is that once you contribute money into your Roth IRA, you actually need to invest that money in there. You need to actually use that money to buy some stocks. I know a lot of people, they kind of just contribute the money and that's really it. You actually need to do stuff with that money. A Roth IRA is just a vehicle. You need to actually buy something, buy some stocks. And what I did is I just bought some index funds and ETFs just to keep it simple because I didn't know what I was doing. So I just put it into index and ETFs. Now that I know that I'm doing, I still invest into index and ETFs, but I do have some individual stocks, but I really don't recommend that, especially if you're starting out. And now if you work a traditional 9 to 5, the next one might be free money that you're leaving on the table right now. And it's number 4, a 401k. Basically, this is an employee sponsored retirement account. Unlike the Roth IRA where you don't have to pay capital gains tax, 401k actually lowers your taxable income, but you still have to pay capital gains tax. So with the Roth IRA, hopefully I can try to make this less confusing. The Roth IRA, you don't have to pay taxes when you sell a stock, but you have to pay taxes when you contribute money. When you sell a stock and you make money, then you still have to pay, capital gains tax. So that's kind of the different. And the cool thing is a lot of employers nowadays actually offer a 401k to their employees. And what they'll actually do is they'll actually match contributions up to certain amounts. Usually it's like, I don't know, a couple percentage points, but it's literally free money. So if you have this, you should be trying to contribute up to the match and nothing more. And the reason why you don't want to do nothing more is just because you don't really have control over what they're investing in. You can choose these certain funds, but a lot of these funds are not, the most optimal. You can probably get a better return investing yourself, within the Roth IRA or within just another taxable brokerage account. So if you have this and you have a match, take advantage of the free money because if I was working corporate, I for sure will. I'm self-employed, so I don't really have a 401k. I don't have, anyone to match it for me. I have what's called a solo 401k where I guess I'm the employer and I don't match it myself, but it's really good because it lowers my taxable income. And it's just another wealth building vehicle that is really good to have if you have the ability to have it. And so these two accounts are, meant for retirements. They're kind of like locked up in a certain way. It's not super flexible. You can't really take it in and out with as much, freedom. And the last account is something you can actually reach and touch and have a little more flexibility with. And it's just a regular taxable brokerage account. Now, this is where you invest, the leftover money after you max out your Roth IRA, after you contribute to the match to a 401k. If you're able to have, that disposable income, then this is where you're able to invest and grow your money even more. It's a similar mechanism as a Roth IRA. It's just a brokerage account. You contribute money and then you buy stocks with it, but it has no really tax advantages. You have to pay capital gains tax. You have to pay all the taxes that you have. There's nothing really special to it, but it's flexible. You can, put money in, you can take money out same day. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't matter what age you are. You can pretty much do anything you want with it. Now, when it comes to investing, I still like to think long-term, right? I don't want to touch my investments or selling stocks in the next 20, 40 years. But with a regular taxable brokerage account, this is money that, if something were to happen, maybe I want to have a down payment on a house, or maybe something cataclysmic and I don't have enough in my emergency fund. This is a part of my financial foundation and I can use that to be okay. I'm not saying I want to or I think of it as that way, but it's just a lot more flexible compared to the 401k and Roth IRA. Now, this is what's in my brokerage account. I use Webull, but I also have a small one with Vanguard, Fidelity. And with all these accounts, it doesn't really matter what you have. You can always change it. You can always like transfer the stocks that you have to another brokerage. It's funny because I actually started off investing using Robinhood, but then when the whole GameStop fiasco happened, I transferred it to Webull because Robinhood kind of screwed me and lost me a lot of money. Now, these are the 5 accounts that you need to have to set up. Now, I want to have a quick pause before the last 2 because this next part is where a lot of people quietly fall off. Now, the next 2 things are kind of more mindset shifts, or kind of things that I did, not necessarily accounts that I opened, that really helped me get ahead. And number 6 is to stop worrying about the little things. Now, what I mean by that is when people kind of think about budgeting and kind of think about personal finance, and kind of think about, okay, restricting, I can't spend this much money, I need to budget everything, and I can't get this, I can't get that, I can't get that. And to an extent, that's true. If you have spending habits that are bad for you, if you're spending money a lot and you don't know where it's going, then yeah, you do have to monitor your spending habits. Just like if you're trying to lose weight, you need to monitor your dietary habits. But in the long term, that'll kind of drive you crazy, and it's going to make you kind of rebound spend, or kind of like hate personal finance. And a lot of the time, a lot of these efforts on the small things don't really add up to anything meaningful. The type of expenses that you actually need to worry about are kind of like the big things in life that you spend the most money on. And those 3 expenses are usually your housing, transportation, and food. And you kind of just focus on these 3 things and kind of really lock in and optimize these, then you don't really need to worry about, not buying coffee, or not going out sometime, or not tipping at, the cash register, because these 3 categories is where you're really going to spend, 80% of your money. And so housing, a lot of people move into an apartment they can't really afford. Transportation, they buy a car they can't really afford, or they buy a car for status and they get locked into $700 monthly payments. And then food, maybe they eat out too much. They go to restaurants 5 times a week, or they're buying, 10 Chipotle bowls a month, and it's costs like $500. If you really just work on these 3 things, and these are things that I actively, worked on. I didn't move into my own place until I hit 25, until I had a bunch of money and saved up, and I never got a new car. I used the one that I had from high school, and I never really used it. And that's because I didn't want to get locked into some crazy car payment, and I just didn't see the point in buying a new car just to impress some people that I don't even like or don't even know. To me, a car is just supposed to get you from place A to B. And so if I don't need one, like right now I'm in San Francisco, it's walkable, I don't use a car, then I don't see the point. And food, come on, we already know this. Restaurants, eating out is unhealthy, but also just really expensive. And so cooking will always be healthier, but also more, affordable. And number 7 is having a rough plan and the willingness to keep learning. Now, there's not really an account or dollar amount that can really replicate this, and all you really need to do, proving yourself one day at a time. A lot of people, when it comes to personal finance and when it comes to these things, is they try to be perfect, they try to do everything and change their lives in 1 month. This is a marathon, not a race. And so when you kind of put that pressure yourself to perform right away, you'll either burn out, hate your life, or you just get analysis paralysis and not do anything. You don't need to be perfect, you don't need to be rich, you kind of just need to have the willingness to learn and just a rough plan to use these accounts, which I hope this video and all my other videos give you. All of these accounts that I listed, all the 5 accounts, are just tools. The plan and what you do, and I guess your able body yourself, is kind of the hands, it's kind of the vehicle which you're going to reach financial freedom with. A plan at 25, at 20, or 18, or maybe below isn't a forecast with a target net worth and a retirement dates. It's just a steering wheel that's going to make sure that you're heading in the right direction. Remember, it's not all about the speed, it's all about the direction and trajectory that you're headed in. And so if you're watching this, you already care about your personal finance and your future. And so right now when you're watching this video, maybe you feel motivated, maybe you felt a gust of inspiration to watch this video, but what happens to that motivation fades? What happens when stuff hits the fan and you don't want to do this anymore? To keep on doing this every single day, little by little. Maybe just dedicate 10 minutes to this, maybe just do 1 account at a time. But the thing that really helped me, and what I try to get everyone, is to kind of just change your mindset about this and kind of integrate this into your lifestyle. It's not really about how do I get rich, it's about how to become the person who gets rich, the person who has the right habits, the right mindsets, the right knowledge, and the right tools to use. It's not about intelligence, it's all about just those daily habits that compound over time. So now look at the list, find the one you're missing, and go handle that single thing. The people who look to set this up at 25 or wait until they're a lot older are already so behind. And so if you're watching this and you're 18 to 25 or even younger, do this now so you can get ahead. But if you're 25 and up, do this now, set these up so you don't fall behind. Your future self isn't asking you, isn't hoping that you're perfect with your money. Your future self is asking you to just start now. And so just one thing, 1 account, start right now. And I promise you, you won't regret it. I never was taught this growing up, so I'm just trying to be the mentor that I wish I had. And if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. It means the world to me. And of course, till next time.